Apparently not. All right.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. We're live, and thanks for coming to my channel. My name is Margaret. This is part of March of the Moderns, the March Readathon number 11,000. So I appreciate you coming by to see. We're going to be talking about The Enchanted April, and I just put it down, and I'm sitting in place, and I don't know where it went. Someone else can hold it up. There we go. Angie can hold it up.
There we go. Let's just hold up our different versions. Ooh, wait.
There we go. There we go. Nice. Mine was hiding under my planner. All right, so I'm going to pop us all down, and you won't hear my voice. I just want everyone to see the background for a second, so hang on. And does anyone know what this beautiful flower is? It has something to do with the novel, and I was surprised that they had it on Canva, so I thought I'd pop it in there. If you know, write it in the chat. Why not? So I'd like to welcome today my two guests. I think Kelly couldn't make it, but we've got Angie from Literary Labors and Sina from Beating Around the Books. Sorry, I never know like the opposite. There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get confused about that too.
Thanks for joining me today, guys. So we've all finished the book, whether it's like an hour ago or 3 days ago. And what do you guys think? Initial thoughts. How'd you enjoy it?
I really loved it. There were some things I was trying to, once I finished the book, I was trying to really think about what I felt for the story itself and for the ending. There was so much I enjoyed about it. I loved the setting. I loved the writing. The writing was gorgeous. I'm realizing now that I really need, the writing really needs to draw me in. And this was perfect. I loved the characters. I found myself really trying to analyze and think about what they were going through and how they were going to, change throughout the story, which is not normally something I do. Whenever I read a book, I usually just read it at its surface level. I don't normally analyze, but this was a lot of fun to do that with. So I enjoyed it.
All right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I don't have much to add to it. It was just really delightful, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like like, how do you say this? You know, how some of, like, I guess to me at least, one of the characters didn't start out as a very likable one, or even maybe two of them, but even still being in their head, following them around, like they may not have been people that I might very much enjoy being around, but they were so delightful to read about.
To laugh at?
And to laugh at, and some of the turns of phrases and the sort of the judgment that some of them pass upon other people without actually knowing them is just hilariously entertaining. And
Yeah.
I actually laughed out loud a couple of times, and I do not do that so often. Like normally it might be a chuckle, which is already quite good, if that happens. I actually laughed out loud a couple of times, and it was just, yeah, it was really delightful. And I'm not used to reading anything that is this wholesome, where
Yeah.
We don't have that nowadays. And I mean, normally, I'm not normally drawn to that either, but it was the right thing right now for me.
Oh, that's good. And you also pointed out, I think earlier, that it was funny or timely that it was a book called The Enchanted April, but we were reading it in March. And I thought, well, it's perfect preparation because it's all about transforming from the cold, drizzly, miserable March into the spring that like flowers are blooming everywhere and something good is bound to happen, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I did some poking around online and came up with some quotes that I thought would be fun to react to. So apparently, maybe it was my edition, the Virago edition, or whenever it was reissued or allowed to be printed by other people, there were a bunch of book reviews. Maybe it's because of the movie. Okay, so have you guys seen the movie? That's the first question to ask.
I've
No.
seen it. I saw it. I've seen it. I saw it a long time ago, so I don't remember much about it. I think I mentioned, Margaret, that this is actually a reread for me. I
Oh,
read this 7 years ago, maybe,
all right.
and I didn't remember anything about the book. In fact,
Oh,
the scenes that I did remember were from the movie, and even then, there was still a lot that I didn't remember.
okay. Nice.
Ah,
Not seen the movie, so I'm gonna be.
I haven't watched it, but I want to now.
Yeah.
It's like probably the second time she described some sort of flower, I was like, I need to see this movie.
Yeah. I just need to go to Italy, really. So
Yeah, but it was nice, in times where we can't travel, it was still kind of nice to live vicariously through these characters.
yeah. You know what's neat? So I just finished a passage to India before reading this, and when I was talking about that or getting ready to talk about that with Raina, I was looking at clips of the movie because there was a great analysis of the movie that helped illuminate something for the book, and I thought, oh, how interesting. So I'm gonna try to crawl through some clips for this movie afterwards as well because I don't have it or have access, so that should be fun. So the Guardian article that I found says that, yes, it's about 4 women who rent a villa in Italy and a lot of transformation ensues. And the thing that was different was it said that it was a paean to the transformative power of travel. And I'm not sure I said that word right, but so seeing as how we haven't traveled in quite some time, and we all probably want to, what was believable about that, or what was reassuring that you liked about that? Do you think it's true? Is it a side issue? Is it a central focus? Sorry, I didn't even get a question at the beginning. I can go first if you like. The transformative power of travel. So I've done a lot of journaling about travel and sort of thinking about how my love for traveling places affects or feeds into what creative pursuits I do and work thoughts. And I think the transformative power that they're talking about is that you can keep reinventing yourself when you keep learning about how you react in different environments. And so that fits for me in this place. I don't think it's the central theme. Yeah, so I'll pass that on. What do you guys think?
Well, when I was taking notes as I was reading, and I was writing down themes, and one of my themes was, and I even put in exclamation point, travel, exclamation point. So for me, it did feel like it was pretty central to the story.
Okay.
Now, how realistic was it? I don't know that it was 100% realistic, having I don't know, are we spoiling anything?
Well, I have here. Let's do the banner. I didn't. This is early. We're breaking out the banner. Go ahead.
I'll try not to spoil. So having the husbands come and the way there was some reconciliation, I think that was a bit unrealistic in some ways.
Yeah.
But I think as somebody who enjoys traveling, I've not traveled abroad. I just haven't had the opportunity to, but I do travel a lot within the US. And for me, traveling is something that renews me. I feel very renewed. I definitely feel different when I'm somewhere else. And I think I very much identified with the ladies, with the originals anyway.
I love that title for them too.
Yeah. I
The original
with just how transformed they were while they were there. Now, will that continue when they return to England? I don't know. but while you're there in that location, in that beautiful location that is just so inspiring and different from your normal day life, like I completely understood that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Yeah, I think it was, to me, it was, not just the husband thing, but also this sort of, I guess, this instant transformation of one of the characters. Obviously, to me, seemed slightly unrealistic, but it did feel like it was, it was rooted in truth, in something that does happen. It was just a bit more magical in this book than maybe it would normally, you would expect it to happen if you're traveling, I think. But then I wondered whether it's just me being jaded, reading this 100 years later, because travel is so much easier. Well, not right now, but we've lived in a time where travel to other countries or wherever is that much easier and at our fingertips. So I was wondering maybe if I'm just being, an entitled little brat, thinking that this was unrealistic, when maybe, for some of these characters, maybe not all of them, but some of them, this may have been the first travel abroad they've ever done, out away from that drizzly gray England that they're used to.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not even that far off when you think about that. I don't know.
I like how they portrayed Mrs. Wilkins. She's the first POV character, and they portrayed her even then as unbalanced. So we see her as unbalanced at the beginning, and then another person sees her as unbalanced. And then she seizes on this idea, sort of creates the kerfuffle around her to make it happen. And then, like, it does seem sort of justified. She does seem like she's laid down the groundwork for, like, this person who's, like, trembling on the edge to just go, like, when she gets to Italy in the villa. Yeah. Yes, and I think we all agree with Pei. The traveling through books is the next best thing. I like that a lot.
Oh, yeah, hi, Pei, by the way. I didn't want to interrupt the people talking, but I saw you.
And that's Joe Compton at Go Indie Now. You aren't being a brat. This book is riddled with unrealistic ideals and happenings. Unrealistic.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back off of the spoiler. Got travel. So if I didn't think travel was the central tenet, what is the central message of this book? The other thing I saw was, like, women coming into their own. And so that seemed to me more of, like, her wish fulfillment for this book is, like, how would I lay down flower petals in front of someone if I wanted them to come out of the cave and be happy, And so I liked, even though it was unrealistic, this development of people who feel trapped in a certain space. And even if it's their own choices, like, they have a way out of this that's sort of created. And I thought, I like that. But like you said, the return after the ending, it doesn't seem like it's going to be sustained. And so that's a little bit note of sadness at the end that it's not depressing. It's not a depressing book, but it's like, oh, that was nice. And now back, Yeah.
I was wondering though if it's, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Sina.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, I was just wondering if it even is really that unsustainable. I mean, I guess the magic of the place is, but I did think maybe, well, if we're going to just leave off the fact that it's all relatively unrealistic, if we're just going to take it at face value, that these characters have learned something, not only about themselves, but also about the way they interact with others in this story world, then maybe it could be sustained. In terms of their relationship and how they treat other people around themselves. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something that Miss Fisher would not approve of.
No, she said 2 glasses of wine was fine.
Oh, at her age though, I'm too young. I should be drinking only water. But it's 9:20 in the evening here, so
there you go. All right. Angie, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say, well, if you're looking at it, through the magical lens of the story, I guess, yeah, it definitely could be sustained. But if I'm thinking about it realistically and what happens when you do travel, or at least for me, there's always the returning back to the monotony and to your daily 9 to 5 job. Yeah, I definitely have never sustained that the transformative power of travel in my daily life. Once I come back and I think I'm going to have a whole new perspective on life. But once it's Wednesday and I've been at work till 6 every night, it's so hard to sustain that.
Slippery. Yeah. So that's one of the quotes actually that I highlighted. So I had tabs. I started off really good and then I ran out, and so I started dog-earing. So don't hate me. But on my page 291, I'll just read a little bit. Accordingly, it was a pleasant meal with everybody amiable and pleased. Briggs thought Mrs. Fisher a dear old lady, and showed he thought so. And again, the magic worked, and she became a dear old lady. She developed benignity, I don't know, never seen that as a noun, and a kind of benignity which was almost playful. And so this is like the third or fourth time that they've talked about this as magic. So I feel like this is that transformation you're talking about that's hard to sustain at home, but it's not really the setting. So the setting starts it off because it so blows Mrs. Wilkins' mind. But then I feel like it's passed from person to person by how they interact with each other. And so the magic is that Mrs. Wilkins starts this chain of maybe seeing someone as they really are, or maybe just treating them as they wish they were treated without like the deserving part coming first. So that is something we could recreate at home. I don't know. Is that too pie in the sky-ish?
No, I think there's, like I said, there's like a kernel of truth in it, you know what I mean? But of course, the way it happens here seems rather unrealistic. But I do think, yes, it's like this Mrs. Wilkins sort of almost refusing to have her mood, ruined by other people. And I don't, not caring how miserable anyone else is. She's just like, oh, it's all fine. Why should you care about this in such a lovely setting? I don't care. I don't have a care in the world. And being very sweet as well to those other people, even when they're not treating her in a way that deserves that. And so in that way, you could probably see it as not actually magic, but her infecting others with this loveliness.
I don't know that I've ever been like that. I mean, I definitely had moods like that, but I don't know if I acted like that. I feel I can definitely see myself. No?
No. I'm a miserable git. I'm more like Mrs. Fisher than I like to admit.
I could definitely see myself in the moment where Mrs. Arbuthnot was parroting the questions to the hostess. So So the Mrs. Fisher takes over the role of hostess because she got there early and she staked out her claim and she just wants to control everything. And so Mrs. Arbuthnot, who really had been the one doing all the work to set it up, is sitting next to her instead of in the hostess seat. And she's saying, would you like some tea? And she's like, no, thank you. Would you? Because she's trying to like assert her role, what she thinks she would be. I'm like, yeah, I got you. But yeah, you got nowhere to go. That was pretty good. Did anyone like see themselves in particular moments or like ruefully admit, oh yeah, I could see that? And maybe that's the caricature of the character helping the readers like reflect on those types of moments.
No, I saw myself in Mrs. Arbuthnot when the other two ladies, Mrs. Fisher and Miss Dester, Lady Caroline, when they arrived earlier than they were supposed to arrive and they claimed their rooms.
Yeah.
I would have been Miss Arbuthnot and gone, why did you take that bed out of your room, which is bigger, and put it in my room? I would have
totally.
Yeah, I would not be happy about that either, especially if I was the one organizing it all. It would seem disrespectful.
Can you imagine what it would have been to be one of the servants, to be the cook or the gardener? They're like, who's going on in this house? Yeah.
I love when Mrs. Fisher tried to, she got some of the servants to move certain pieces of furniture, and then the guy commented on how nobody would be able to use the door, being very sensible and rational. And she goes, nobody will want to use the door. She doesn't want people to go through it. Oh, it was hilarious.
To, like, be peeled back. I kept waiting for, like, let's see, Mrs. Wilkins said, the time will come when you will ask me to use your pen because you want to offer it or something like that, or the door that was blocked off to be unblocked. And I thought, this has got to unravel by the end, right? This is like Chekhov's gun. Like, I want to be all resolved, but it wasn't, and it was fine.
Yeah, but maybe it was more metaphorically speaking, I guess.
Yeah, they definitely have relationships.
So one thing I loved about, so we talked about who we could see who we could see ourselves in. And I felt like, I could see myself in different characters at different moments. Also including Mrs. Fisher, to my shame. But I loved how miserable she was and how she didn't even care. So there's one scene, or just one little sentence that I didn't mark anything, but I actually remembered which page it's on because I thought it was so funny. Oh. So this is, I think, this is when they're still in England, and Mrs. What's her name? Arbuthnot and Mrs. Wilkins go to Mrs. Fisher, who obviously can't go anywhere because of her stick. And she, that's when she's wondering about Mrs. Wilkins's mental health and whether she's, safe to actually
wants a doctor's
note with. And she wants references that like attest to her soundness of mind or something. And then she said, she doesn't say, this is in her head, of course, right? This is like stream of consciousness or whatever you want to call it, or a figurative narrative situation. Figural? Can't remember. Anyway, Yes, here. The only references she really wanted, for she was much too old and firmly seated in her place in the world for questionable associates to matter to her, was one with regard to Mrs. Wilkins's health. It was just, I don't care what other people say about her. I'm too old for this. I don't know. This was such a good characterization of her in this one sentence.
Yeah. There's a lot of very dry humor that's like, it's pretty involved. The sentences are pretty involved, and you end up sort of feeling like you're perched on a wall observing, kind of like above everything, because I think the narrator, who gets in everyone's heads, but in an understandable way, does a very snappy job of being British and judgmental. So not that everyone is, but it's a style, and she goes for it and does it successfully. So I like that as well. Okay, so The Guardian was where I got the review. The second source was, let's see, Madeline Miller, who is a big author, as you know, but she was writing a review for NPR at around the same time, and she calls it several things. She says it's a satire on post-World War I British society, and we can go into that. A sardonic rumination on human foibles, which we've sort of gone into in terms of how we can see people erring in their ways, and a tale of women coming into their own, which is what I was characterizing earlier. But the idealism and the wholesomeness that I think we're picking up on is how is it separate from the satire and the sardonic rumination? Because there's definitely that like biting quality to some of the narration, and dialogue, but it doesn't come out feeling like that way. How do you guys feel about like those things coexisting together?
I did not see it as satire at all, but maybe it's because like I said, I take everything at face value whenever I read.
Yeah. Well, it's not on all the characters. It says on post-World War I British society. So it's like the stuff that they leave and the social mores that feeling constrained in, I think is what she's saying. It's
I'm not convinced of that statement by Madeline Miller.
Okay.
I would agree that it's satirical take on a very a section of British society, but it's aristocracy and the upper middle class. That's not the whole of society.
That's
And
true.
it's so I wouldn't really, and this is one thing that I thought, how do you say? So yeah, I thought certain observations there definitely had satirical character. One being I thought was hilarious when what is it? Who is it? Maybe this is a spoiler. I'm not sure. If we said the other one was a spoiler, then maybe.
Just in case.
I wouldn't say it's a spoiler, but yeah. So the husband of Miss, what's it called? What's his name again?
Miller.
Mellish. Such a weird name as well.
Very
Anyway,
weird.
how he really appreciates the blue-bloodedness of Lady Caroline in her reactions to certain situations, and he's just so full of admiration. And it's completely, to me it felt satirical because it's completely over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in the same way, how obviously him being this sort of greedy lawyer going, oh yeah, these the aristocracy, they spend money with both hands, and isn't that great for me as a person who wants to be employed by them? And it was just so on the nose and so over the top that that felt satirical to me. But what I found really weird and grating about it was knowing when it was published, and also how they do talk about, well, very in passing, the First World War is mentioned, but really there's not there's no reflection or no trauma there whatsoever.
Yeah.
They're not touched by it.
Right.
I mean, there's one sentence where somebody says,
the person she might have,
I think there's like this tiny little, how do you say, it's like it's hinted at that there is, that there's some heartbreak there and some trauma, but it's glossed over so quickly, where it almost feels like this was written as a sort of, like you said, wish fulfillment, and as opposed to the other modernists who were writing at the same time, just completely sort of, let's just do this sugary sweet thing.
Yeah.
Where I guess we're also taking the piss a little bit, and we're trying being in everybody's heads and stuff, but it's all really positive and lovely, and
Yeah.
how do you say this?
So they managed to, Elizabeth Von Arnim, sorry I haven't enunciated her name, she manages to lambast 4 different types in this post-World War I British middle to aristocracy class, and they're all different. You learn their different circumstances at the beginning, but they all have foibles about them that she manages to critique very squarely. And I was just thinking, when you were talking about Wilkins, the lawyer, it's funny that the thing that is his foible, the thing that is what makes him unlikable and pretty one-dimensional, is like his business ambition and how he can be on his best behavior because that's his like sole guiding light. Meanwhile, that's the reason why he's acceptable to Lady Caroline, because he's not a grabber. So it's kind of like, that's weird. That's a negative, but it's also positive for her. Like, okay, for the purposes of the story, continue, like whatever. So, I don't know. Does that bring anything up, or like? I was
just thinking of the grabber part. I think because Lady Caroline seems so, which is understandable, she seems so obsessed with men being grabbers or non-grabbers, and of course, because that's what she's experienced her whole life. Men look at her and want to grab her, touch her. So when she finds a man who doesn't want that, that's the exception, and it doesn't happen very often. So I saw that more as right now, when you mentioned, the fact that he was one-dimensional and his whole purpose was his business, I guess I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say. I guess she didn't recognize that part in him because she was so focused on the fact that he was not obsessed with her.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think that really illustrates really well how, this, I don't know, I'm assuming this style of writing came about at that time, where you have, I don't actually know. Yeah, because I think until the modernists, you usually had this sort of authorial narrator and not really this sort of diving into, or at least not in this intensity, diving into different people's consciousnesses.
Yeah.
I think this is very perfectly illustrated here because we see, I've forgotten his name again, Mellish, and his motivations. And then we see how his wife reacts to how he acts on the outside. And it's, completely different to where he is coming from. But nonetheless, the outcome's good. And the same with Lady Caroline, who has obviously made all these, annoying experiences with men. And to her, the most important part is that he is not acting like one of those idiots. And so what am I trying to say? So we can basically see, like, it doesn't really matter what his motivations or what any individual's motivations are. We see how other people are reacting to them from their point of view. And, they might have other priorities.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfectly stated, Selena. That's what I was trying to get at. It's like other people's motivations don't matter. It's what your own driving factor. And like you said, if the results are what you want, then nothing else really matters. Like for Miss Wilkins, like you said, Mellersh, I mean, even when he comes to Italy and he's paying attention to his wife and being affectionate with her, it was all initiated because of Lady Caroline's, because of how he saw Lady Caroline viewing Miss Wilkins.
That's right.
So
that's part of the magic.
It wasn't. What's that?
That's part of the magic. It's like the reaction of magic that is set off is that he sees an aristocrat lady regarding his wife, who he's like not sure isn't crazy, as a good person and worthy of being a friend. So he goes, "Oh, well, maybe she's a good person then." And it's kind of like, wow,
Yeah.
really have to knock you over the head.
Wow, yeah, what a great guy. But the one thing I thought was quite interesting yes, there was that part. And then the other part, I think, before he even arrives, he's thinking right about, oh, for once she's like being really useful to me and whatever, right? And so he decides to be kind to her because she's proving useful for him in his ambitions. And that obviously seemed really cold and distant, but then you say the thing she sees this other person regarding her in a different, and I think that's when I do think then it's not just self-serving. I think at that point then he also sees his wife in a different light. It's prompted by someone else, but you know what I mean? And then it kind of gets into this sort of self-perpetuating thing, like we talked about, right? The magic thing that, the kinder he is, the better she feels. And then she's, and then the whole, I don't know, everybody's happy.
The ear pinching. The ear pinching is out of control.
The what?
The ear pinching. That's like what their for affection is. And I'm like, stop pinching your ear. Yeah.
Eventually, that did lead up to him combing her hair out. So
that's true. That's true at the end. And that's the first thing she noticed when she got to the villa was that it was such beautiful stuff. Why did she never think about this back at home? And so, yeah, I like that too. Okay, so we're going to veer towards another spoiler. You guys have both heard of Smart Bitches Trashy Books, right? The podcast. There's like 3 or 4 core ladies who run it and do reviews and do all this fun stuff. And they're pretty funny. So one of their results for this book is what came up first. And their take, Carrie, one of their takes was that, we put the banner back up. The men spoil the book. And it made her sad because she hates to think of the women returning to their dreary homes afterwards. So she's like, there's not much plot. It sort of meanders along. We've got personal growth and capitals. And then towards the end, it sort of really speeds up and you sort of introduce these men and they bumble around and you have to sort of reorient yourself as to like what the goal is. And that was not what she wanted. And I was like, okay. What do you guys think of this take?
The only one that bothered me with was Lady Caroline.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't mind. I wasn't bothered by Miss Wilkins and Miss Arbuthnot, rekindling their fire with their husbands. That I was fine with that, but it was Lady Caroline and Mr. Briggs. I just thought Lady Caroline doesn't need, that's her problem, or her motivation, her issues aren't going to be resolved with a man entering the picture necessarily. At least not the way it was portrayed in the story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also it was, well, I mean, we talked about how unrealistic everything is, but then somehow even within that world, her suddenly warming up to him after having basically having been sort of trying to do everything in her power to avoid the guy, was just ridiculous. Even if you were to say, okay, the magic took hold of her and she was like, oh, I should be nice and I should be polite. Gratitude. That doesn't mean you have to fall in love with the guy that just annoyed the fuck out of you before, like that was just ridiculous. And there's like this hint in somewhere in between, there's when she starts thinking, which was apparently an urge she'd never felt before. Which I thought was brilliant. When she starts thinking, there's this hint, right, that there was a person she loved and truly loved and that she lost. I think. Did I misinterpret?
No,
I think
that was the only passing reference to World War I, is that the person she thought she could marry that wasn't a grabber had died in the war. And so And so then she's clearly, mourning him, but probably was not given the space to mourn him properly. Instead, having had all these suitors sort of hoisted upon her. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's kind of really sad and tragic. And at that moment, I began to have a bit more empathy for her, because before she just seemed like an entitled, privileged, terrible person, really. Well, not terrible. It was still very funny, but wouldn't like her as a person. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I get that, and maybe then it is very hard work to go to all these parties in London society, and that's why she wants to flee her privileged life. Fair enough. But then to have this random dude who, basically loses all faculties when he sees her. And you can only just imagine that comical sort of drooling, the guy that goes, yeah, what was that all about? And the fact that he does such an about face from being sweet on Mr. Arbuthnot, that left it for him. Yeah. It was just, oh, come on, you can't be that shallow. Right. But yes, you are that shallow. Okay.
Especially considering the way he was referring to Miss Arbuthnot. I thought it was very sweet the way he, talked about being an orphan and not having a family. And when he saw her, he thought of family and a place where he wanted to be. And it was all so sweet. And then all of a sudden in comes Lady Caroline. And like Miss Fisher says, he becomes a fool. Yeah. And at the sight of a beautiful face. Yeah. Yes.
So okay, the pairings off. We're still on the spoiler alert. The pairings off and the right about face that happens there. That's what makes me think this is like a little too moral for me. Like, it's delightful, it's wish fulfillment, it's perfectly glorious about Italy in spring, but the ending of everyone finding their match or growing in love and having it be like, oh, there was about to be infidelity, but nope, that's bad. Let's make this all about people finding the appropriate match. And I was just like,
sorry.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, patriarchy. Well, because to me, this is what really annoyed me. Then we talked about it. Yeah, Lady Caroline is just like, oh, come on, she's also really rich. Did she really have to marry a dude for her job, for happiness? It's not like I understand, of course, that women had a lot fewer opportunities, but she's rich.
Right.
Like,
young and beautiful.
Couldn't she, well, and beautiful, couldn't she have come to the conclusion, I don't know, that she wants to, who knows, do art, or I don't know, fund some charity or whatever, you know what I mean?
Dress people fashionably. She goes on and on about the clothes of these poor originals and how like they're hopeless. And I'm like, well, give them a makeover or do something. Yeah.
Yeah, could she not have just found something other than marrying the guy that she'd been trying to avoid?
Yeah.
Like,
so I think,
and I know that's wishful thinking as well. I do sometimes also find that, when you said about the outcome of, what's the name? Smart Bitches Trashy Books.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I wanted. It's like, yeah, it's not your book, it's somebody else's. I'm a bit more like, well, you can't expect it to have the same sentiments and the same sensibilities that we have now 100 years later. And I get that. But I also kind of have that thing where I'm like, but she was portrayed like this all the time. So it doesn't really make sense, apart from, you as an author appeasing the patriarchy.
okay.
Which I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm saying.
I had to put it in those terms. Like, I was thinking about how she places it. So she does go into too much religion is bad, because we have Mrs. Arbuthnot. I guess I can take this off. Too religious and too sort of like retiring, as they're using the word retiring, in terms of her devotion to the poor, and she can't put up with the fact that her husband writes about 100-year-old affairs and like what is it called, roman à clef, or I can't remember what the English term is, but things that were based on immorality, and that he makes money off of it, and we don't get to hear his point of view until at the end. So there's like, here's the border, here's too far, and so she's unhappy, and we need to get her back into the band. And maybe that band is what you're saying is the patriarchy, and that's why it was like the dissatisfying part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what. So you're talking about Rose, right? And the religion thing, and
Yeah.
she's miserable being religious and being good, right? I don't know if that's like, I didn't mind her rekindling her love with her husband at all. And I thought that was kind of, sounds so terrible, kind of neat how she realized maybe how at first she was a bit incredulous, but how she realized that, being good came so easily to Miss Wilkins, because she'd always assumed that, this was basically the foundation of her faith, that was all hard won, and, that it's just sacrifice, and, and well, sacrifice and misery, and I don't know what else, and then sort of realizing maybe that's not all there is to being good. Yeah. And so being able to let loose a bit more, I think that was all right. I didn't expect her to go around then all of a sudden getting a divorce. That would have not been true to her character.
Yeah.
That was Miss Wilkins you were talking about, Sina?
No, Miss Arbuthnot.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a point that's related to that, but gets a little bit more general and out of the plot. So one of my interesting quotes that I highlighted was early on, page 38, when Mrs. Arbuthnot is is worried about Mrs. Wilkins and inviting her husband. And she says, Mrs. Arbuthnot said nothing because her reason for not wanting Frederick to know was the exactly opposite one. And that paragraph concludes with, far better, she thought, to be missed by Mellish than to be sped by Frederick. To be missed, to be needed from whatever motive was, she thought, better than the complete loneliness of not being missed or needed at all. So we've got like the two unhappy marriages compared to each other there. But what do you think about is there a way to compare these, or should you just not, because they're just different unhappinesses? It's kind of like having loved and lost being better than never loved at all, as Shakespeare says. Did that resonate for anyone? Sorry, I'm getting congested. No?
So you asked if there was a way, if you could compare the two. Sorry, my sound is glitchy. It keeps going in and out, so I didn't quite hear what you said.
I was thinking about comparing the two unhappy marriages and the fact that Mrs. Arbuthnot is saying that it's worse to not be missed than it is to be missed, even if it's for a bad motive. Even if it's Mellish and he wants you because he wants you to be a servant and make his fish exactly right. That's better than not being missed at all because they ignore you or, don't care. And is there an element of, should we compare these unhappinesses or should we just leave them both and not compare?
I wouldn't compare them. I don't know.
I think is that it's the time period where you married for, I don't know. Well, it seemed like they both married for love initially in their marriages. I was going to say maybe you marry more for
security.
It's your duty. It's just something you have to do. But they seemed like they were in love initially. I think it's just right. Or am I?
No, I thought so too. I thought they both couples had married for love.
Not worry about spoilers. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes, and I'm not going to put the spoiler tag up anymore. So we'll just talk really about this stuff. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, well, isn't there like Tolstoy or someone who said that you can compare unhappy families, but you can't compare happy families because they're all the same? So I'm trying to see if there was a way we wanted to do that or not. I think we're just throwing it out.
Is it something like all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way, or is all happy families are happy in their own way? One of those. Yeah, but I think it is. Do you think it just does boil down to monotony? It's just everyday living. Everyday, the things you do in life, just kind of like weigh down on you. You don't take the time to.
Thank you.
I don't know. You don't take the time to nurture, I guess, your relationship because things get in the way. From the husband's role and the women's role, not blaming one or the other, but I think it's just something that happens maybe to marriages. They just.
But I think
we don't know.
Oh, sorry. What?
I was just saying we don't know. So
okay. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot.
My husband is currently in the other room because I warned him before, and he was like, "Okay, I'm just going to hang out in the other room." So what I was going to say? Oh yeah, so the whole comparing the two. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, if you want to compare the two, I don't understand. Like, I think they're sort of it's like misery for different reasons, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I guess you could say both of the couples have somehow gotten away from each other, right? They've sort of somehow gotten alienated for different reasons. But then you've got what's her name? Rose. I'm going to call her Rose. What is Arbuthnot? Is that the name?
Arbuthnot.
Arbithnot. I keep stumbling over it. Anyway, so she says this, right, about the whole better to be missed for whatever reason than not to be missed at all. But so that's why I think that's probably why she got into this whole church service and all the poor, and because she needs to feel needed. And I think there's this added issue of, well, again, spoiler, but yeah, whatever, she's lost a baby, right, a child. We don't know if it happened before or after giving birth, but regardless, it's very traumatic. And so, she's got that sort of unfulfilled wish. And then on top of it, the husband who's, I wonder actually, now, sorry, I've just come up with another thought. I wonder if maybe, who knows, maybe this whole thing happened when he was already writing these immoral books. And I wonder if maybe she thinks, that this was some sort of punishment by God, who knows, and then that she then, and then she devotes herself to this sort of not religious life, but, to helping in the, helping in the church and donating money, which, may be twofold. It may be sort of both wanting to be needed, but also maybe trying to somehow appease God or whatever. And then you've got the other person, Lottie. I loved how she was called Lottie after a while.
Yeah.
Mrs. Wilkins, whose misery comes from, well, being needed, but being needed in this servant's fashion, and never being actually appreciated for who she is, and never having any pleasure for herself, and her husband not seeming to want to give her any, or, he just treats her like this sort of, what's the word?
Minion?
No, yes, but I meant a different word. Well, I can't think of it right now. Well, is it factotum? Is that what you call it? Or is that a German word?
It's an English word. It's just not very often used.
But you know what I mean? And so she's like, oh yeah, he needs me to cook his stupid fish, and he won't even let me have sole. Was it sole?
I know. No, sole's the only one he likes.
Sole is what he doesn't want, and he won't even let me have sole when he insists on having fish all the time. And and then he the whole thing with thrift and being very thrifty, but not when it comes to his food. And it's like, I mean, it is very caricature, isn't it? But so I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I think their misery comes from very different places, and they're both valid. Yeah.
Sure. Angie, did you find a way to plug in, or is it? I saw your SOS.
It's plugged in. I don't know what's going on. It's plugged in. Everything is plugged in. But I have it says 46 minutes remaining. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the outlet. Maybe.
Okay. Well, hopefully it'll hang on for like the last 10 minutes of the discussion.
Yeah.
Did you guys have other quotes that you wanted to bring up? Because I've got a few. I've got one on like the liberty authority. You guys remember that one? Mrs. Wilkins says, "Why would I?" It's about that piece about wanting to be the hostess role. Let's see, page 108. "What is rather silly," said Mrs. Wilkins with much serenity, "is to mind. I can't see the least point in being in authority at the price of one's liberty. Because if someone takes up the role of being like head of the house or mistress, then they don't have to think about it. It's like the ball's in their court, and it's okay not to have the ball in your court." And I thought, oh, that's a modern problem as well. It's about control and liberty and privilege and the sort of thing we're working around. And I'm going to think about that some more, because that was one that I put to the side. So I don't know if that hit anyone else.
Yeah, I love that one. Oh, hello. Hi, Sandy. What was I saying? Yeah, I love that quote. Well, I think one part of that is obviously her being very, I don't know, light and airy-fairy where she is, not caring about anything and just, well, let's just let it go. But another part, I'm assuming, is informed by her life experience of being needed to sort out all the stuff in the home.
True.
And she doesn't care for it one bit.
Right.
And she's like, oh, just be glad that somebody else is doing all that. We can just go around frolic in the garden. Great.
Neither does Caroline.
Sorry?
Okay, so let's see. The three of them that don't want to do the housekeeping or the ordering of the meals, the three ladies who don't, two of them do speak Italian, so they can, and they fob it off. And the last one doesn't speak Italian, so she can't. And Mrs. Arbuthnot, who would want to do that role because she wants to be hostess, can't. And so it's like this ping pong around because of opposite motivations. I thought it was comically pretty brilliant. This poor cook, Francesca.
Oh, the poor woman. But I loved also how she was like really, motivated to get all the expensive stuff from her family.
That's the
business to the family.
Yeah.
But in the end, she was satisfied, right? She was able to decide for herself what they would.
But she had a budget.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah. Briggs' solution was practical and solved everyone's ego problems, I feel. Which is good. He was there for a reason.
He was sorting out the food.
Right.
But there was something that really irked me. Speaking of men being there for no reason or ruining it or maybe not. So, because Mrs. Fisher loves men, clearly. She loves the company of men because she thinks women are fucking silly or something. Oh, sorry.
It's fine.
I'm not American. I tend to swear.
I did too. It's something with lives. It's something to do with being online.
I think, but generally I also swear like a sailor when I'm not being filmed. Yeah. So Mrs. Fisher, so this is modern sensibilities again, but she seems to have some internalized misogyny.
Oh yeah.
A lot of it. But what was the other thing that I hated it. So I hated it because I felt so seen as well. I felt called out. My former self is when, this is again a big spoiler, I guess, but when the Frederick talks to Lady Caroline after the dinner scene, and he thanks her for being so gracious as to not out him, for pretending that she didn't know him and blah 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 blah. And he says, you acted like a man.
Oh, yeah.
And you were such a good guy. Like, you were like my male friends for, not making, not, how do you say this? Not outing me, not letting me, how do you say this?
Not
like
being
run into the knife.
Not being emotional?
No, not even. I didn't think it was about the emotionalness. I think because he was talking about loyalty. He was talking about you were loyal like a man. Because you wouldn't out me in front of my wife. So you were basically keeping my indiscretions private.
Yeah.
Like only a man could, of course. And so I remember reading this and then going, already being a bit annoyed. And then the next sentence is from her perspective. And she says something along the lines of this was being very nice compliments that were coming out of his mouth. And I was like, oh my God, this is you, like 5 years ago or something like that. Not that I've been in this type of situation, but the thing where it's like being called or like one of the guys, because I've had a friend at one point say to me, oh no, Sina, you're one of the bros. And I took that as a compliment and I was like really happy about it. And then years later, I was like, what? Like, I mean, of course, you're friends with men. That's fine. But why would you take it as a compliment to basically be told that you are not like any of the other girls, who are not like other girls? What nonsense is this?
Yeah. That's a good point. Angie, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, he was basically praising her, right, for not divulging that they'd had maybe, that he'd been after her. That's what he was praising, that she kept quiet about their
his flirtation, his motivation, his straying from the path of marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was loyal like a man.
Have you guys seen Kate and Leopold, that movie with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan, like 10, 15 years ago?
Sorry, what is it called?
Kate and Leopold. It's like a time travel romance. And the beginning, the scene, I just saw the preview recently. The beginning scene is something like, what's his name? The scummy guy who's her boyfriend at the beginning saying, you're like a man, Kate, because she's so good at business and spills all over herself. And it's just like, I don't know what to do with this. You know, and it's like, oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
You're right. You put your finger on it. Internalized misogyny. But I mean, everyone had that at the time. And, you know, we're just sort of coming alive to it now.
Well, like I said, clearly I had it or still have it. But, you know, it was only a few years ago. I only realized, like, I don't know, a year ago or something, I thought about it. I was like, why did you feel like this was a compliment?
Because you were being elevated from the pool of women to the pool of women.
From the silly women to the people you can actually hang out with and have fun with. You know, I got angry in retrospect.
Yeah. Okay, can we talk about the word tawdry? So you pointed out that just like last thoughts, I guess. My last thought's going to be this word. So the Lady Caroline character talks, or she reflects. Yes, she's trying to get away from grabbers. She's just starting to think. It's a new thing. She has to spend hours doing it. She falls asleep in fits, and then she finally gets to a good point, and then like these people arrive or whatever. But the thing that sort of like breaks into her consciousness that makes her think, oh, maybe it's me, is she thinks the word tawdry could be applied to her. And so instead of being someone who's running away from things, she's someone who has behaved badly. And she kind of has to go, oh, well, how else could I behave? Like, what are my other options? And I don't know that revolves her perfectly to be able to end the way she does, but I thought that was a fascinating word to like plop in the middle of these women, because they all probably have different conceptions of this word, and none of them would apply to her, except for Mrs. Fisher. She would probably she would probably call Lady Caroline tawdry.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of that applied to that was when she was wearing her silk robe that was practically see-through. That would apply to maybe possibly her being tawdry, but I was confused by that. I didn't understand why she was applying the word tawdry to herself.
So I was wondering if maybe its meaning has changed a little bit. Like it's probably still very similar, but maybe there's a little bit, like how we talked about, what was it, Mrs. Arbeth not being retiring, which we don't use in that way anymore either. But you can kind of guess from the context what is meant. And tawdry, well, the only way that I could think of what it means, how it might apply to her with the meaning that we now assign to it is, I think at one point she said, when she talks about being tawdry, I think she talks about almost, this sounds like again 21st century sensibility, that she realizes her privilege and that she feels like she's been cheap by wasting it, by being unhappy, instead of trying to find something that would make her happy, because she's already got so many things in place that other people don't have. So being, tasteless and cheap over the fact that, she's already has all these things, how do you say this, like in her favor, and she was still wasting them by being, ungrateful.
Yeah. The tawdry, showy but cheap and of poor quality. I think it's kind of like shoddy meaning cheap quality, but also with like a sexual intonation to it. So yeah, you gave a great definition. I was just trying to like parse it apart. When I was thinking of it, I was thinking of the fact that she doesn't have like meaning in her life, and she hadn't considered it before then. And so, yeah, like she has all these privileges, and she's finally come to the point. I mean, finally, she's like in her 20s, where she's considering like what she could do otherwise, that she has options. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And that she has all these people around her to choose from in terms of like, oh, Like, I could choose any of these futures. Like, which one will I walk down? Like, I don't know. That was kind of fun. Any other final thoughts? Favorite quotations? Thoughts about spinsters or impropriety without men? That was like the quote that I've recognized from elsewhere. Very
That
hard
was
to be improper
good.
without men. Like, yes.
That was so good.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that one.
Yeah, it's like out of the mouths of babes. It's kind of feels like, because Mrs. Wilkins is so innocent. Yeah, actually, when you're talking about 21st century language, when we were thinking about the unhappiness, I was thinking that Mrs. Wilkins' household was operating on a scarcity mindset. Because like all the things was like, well, he's not gonna do this, I'm not gonna do this, and like, oh, I just want my sheet on the bed, and he won't let me have it. You know, like, everything was scarcity. So.
Oh God, that was such a lovely scene as well. How she wakes up in that bed by the first morning and she's so happy about being in bed by herself.
Yeah, that was
so beautiful.
That was nice. It's a breath of fresh air. I can't wait to be amid all those flowers. I'm amid some. But not those. We're not Italy level yet here in Oregon. Texas maybe has some flowers popping out.
Yeah, we've got our spring flowers popping up along the roadside.
Nice.
Here it's only a few early ones, but not quite yet. But speaking of beds and being alone in bed, I've just got to say this because it was, such a contemporary novel. When she talks about this being alone in bed and rejoicing in it, I was immediately reminded of Mrs. Dalloway.
Oh,
have you guys read it?
I haven't read it.
No, okay. I only read it in January. It was a buddy read. But anyway, I'm not spoiling loads. It's just really not anything. But it's basically Mrs. Dalloway, who is married, is described as sleeping in a different room from her husband. And it's several times. There's this sentence that says, can't quote it 100%, but it basically said the bed was narrow. So, it's kind of the opposite. She's in her little single bed by herself, and she clearly is very lonely in it. And she's not, she's not alone, she's lonely. And it was just this sort of juxtaposition between these two.
Time period. That's interesting. That was a glorious morning. She can't decide whether she wants to stay in bed and luxuriate or like go to the next pleasure, which is looking out the window to see what her view is. Like, I was like, yeah,
brilliant. Yes.
Yeah.
I could even there's obviously not a lot of tension in there, but this was kind of a tense moment. I was like, I was wondering even, it's like, is it going to be, a glorious day, or is it going to be pouring it down again? And
good writing. That's good.
Come
writing.
on, open the window.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and one other thing, since we're talking, I was talking about intertextuality, I guess. The thing about Frederick in the room, no, not Fred, is it before Fred? I can't remember. Anyway, Frederick arriving at some point, and at one point before they meet, before he's in the house and stuff, I was thinking, like, is this some sort of like some sort of Oscar Wilde thing with like mistaken identities and, not mistaken identities, but, like everything unraveling after a moment. And I was like, is this setting up for this? I mean, I guess it wasn't, but it was kind of a tease. Like, I'm sure she's read him. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not sure. But
talking about Ernest, right? Yeah, I knew there were so few characters that they all had to fit together. So as soon as he came up, I was like, that's the author. Arundel is the guy.
Yeah. I thought the same. It was like, because I was like, oh yeah, didn't she tell that he wrote under a pseudonym? Yeah, that must be him. But I was like, oh, is there gonna be some sort of
more hijinks? Like, no, there's only like 20 pages left. There can't be any more. Use it in an ebook. You can't really tell how long there is left. Yeah, that's fun. Well, we're past our hour. I know you guys have other things to do. It's nighttime and it's the last bit of weekend, so I don't want to hold you back. Do you have any final thoughts or recommendations about people thinking about The Enchanted April? I think this is very different from her other books. Like I forgot to go back and read the introduction until right before, and it was talking about how Vera is her other novel, and it's very different and realist, and she needed a break, and so she was sort of working through some of her things in her life. And I think it might be interesting to read that as well to get a better sense of her as an author, but I'll give it some time. I don't need to rush over to something more realistic.
Yeah, I was curious about Vera. So you read that it's more realistic. It's not the same kind of magical, dreamy quality about. Okay.
Yeah, the introduction to this edition, at least, is basically the reviewer Rebecca West, who said all these things about Elizabeth Von Arnim and how she appreciated parts of Vera because it was like hard hitting and modernist in that way. Whereas this is like, what is she doing? Like this happiness crap and whatever. How her opinion may have changed over time and this kind of thing. And how Vera was more based on her own experience separating from her husband, I think, but I'm not sure. So like I said, I was just skimming it right before when I was trying to do all my like notes and stuff.
Who wrote your introduction?
Who wrote the introduction? Good question.
You said Rebecca West?
No, she's referenced. Terence DeVere White, London, 1995.
Well, this is the same one then. I've just got a different cover.
Okay.
But I haven't read it. I actually forgot to go back.
I know. I forgot until right before. I was like, oh.
Because I was like, yeah, like I said, I felt like a student before class, just like trying to rush to finish it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting if that you said that, because this was my first Elizabeth Von Arnim. So I guess it's not representative then, but
I don't think so. So,
but I guess if it's representative of her writing style, not the content, but her. How do you say this? Yeah, her writing in general. Yeah. I would definitely read another one, even if it's, more realist.
Yeah.
Maybe not right now, but
yeah.
If I come across one in a secondhand bookshop like this one.
Yeah, exactly. That's where mine came from. I don't remember. It's been a long time, so I don't even recognize the used bookstore stamp anymore because I'm sure this has come with me through. Oh yeah, Goodwill. Okay, so several years.
Okay, I got mine in Oxfam. It's still got that, pencil writing. Price.
Yeah. That's what I look at too. That's fun. Sourcing.
Well, there's not that many here in Germany, right, where you can find English books. So basically, the only one that I can actually visit, not right now, but normally, is Oxfam. Yeah. They have like one shelf of English books. Everything else is German or other languages.
Yeah. Hey, at least it's not as bad as Georgia. I always think of Jim going to his one bookshop that has like a shelf and going, nobody I was looking for today. Okay, let's try this. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even go to bookshops. I go to browse for German books, but I don't tend to browse for English books very often because usually it's also like one shelf, maybe a bit more, but most of it is gonna be thrillers and romances that I'm not interested in. So
yeah.
There's no reason for me to go. And then on top of it, it's very expensive to get English books. It's ridiculous because let's not get into this. It's going to take too long. But basically in Germany there's this set price for books where you can't compete with dropping the price. Therefore, whether I order on Amazon or go to my local bookshop doesn't make any difference to me, money-wise.
Really?
Which is great. But English books do not have that. And I do not, unfortunately, own, how do you say this, like a golden goose? So it's sometimes really difficult to justify spending twice as much in a local bookshop for an English book. Yeah, so I tend to just get them secondhand.
That's good. That's a good rule, I think. Yeah, the temptation is great. It's good that it's only in English books. That's why, yeah. Anyway, different subject. subject.
Sorry, yes.
Long, different time. I could go into that for a long time as well. Yeah. Well, this was good. I'm sorry we missed Kelly, but I'm sure we'll catch up with her on Instagram and hope she enjoyed it as well. And anyone who wants a breath of fresh air for the spring, we recommend The Enchanted April.
If you can deal with very happy endings.
Right. Perfectly neat endings. Yeah. Yeah. Have some wisteria in your life. I recommend it. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Just let everyone know I have one live book discussion left for Their Eyes Were Watching God on Wednesday at noon Pacific time. So hope to see you there. And then I'm going to take some time to recover my wits after the March readathon and put together a video about takeaways from having a readathon, because I think that'd be fun and new. So hopefully you'll join me with that. And otherwise, have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll see you around soon. Thanks, guys.